I have a question for you. Do you feel sometimes that you want to do something, but because it's not going to be perfect, you'd rather not do anything? Because if you don't do anything, you won't fail? Think about that. You know what? I was looking at this channel, for example. Last year, I did 120 or 130 videos in as many days. I was proud of myself, and then a few things happened. I got caught up with work. I wanted to focus on my students. And you know what? I distanced myself from that project. And that was in September. We're 5 months later, and I had not done anything. And that's why in the last couple of days, I said, okay, I need to find a way to get back to it because that's something that I love to do. It allows me to communicate with my community. It allows me to get some ideas going. It allows me to stay on my toes and grow as a person. Because if I don't do that, if you don't do that, if you do the same thing over and over again for a day, for a week, for a month, for years, think about it. If you do the same thing for decades, in 10 years, 20 years, you'll be exactly at the same point and spot you are right now. That's what you really want? There's so much more we want to be able to grow. So stay with me. We'll discuss that today. Welcome to my channel. My name is Alain Faber and I work in a high school for 20 plus years, and I've enjoy learning and help others to realize that learning is one of the best skills to make the world a better place for themselves and the others. And you know what? My passion for leadership is also something that keeps me going because I want my students and I want you to become better leaders in your life and for the world. How else can we have a better world? So stay with me. We'll discuss these ideas today. Do you remember a few years ago, a few decades ago for some of you, you wanted to cook and you started cooking. You had ingredients and you had recipes. And then you were following the recipes with step A, B, C, D, and you wanted to make sure that you followed the recipe to the letter. The beauty with that is that you were sure of what you were getting. You knew what ingredients you had at the beginning, you knew what you had at the end, and that is amazing. One of my favorite recipe is crepes from my mother's recipe, who she got from an aunt or great aunt or something like this. It's very simple, 5 ingredients, and I put it together. For many years, I actually followed the recipe all the time. And you know what? At some point, I misplaced it. And I said, okay, by memory, could I figure it out again? And guess what? The first few times, they were not quite the same. Then they were the same. And then I was just putting the ingredients by memory, but also exploring to try to play with the recipe. And what it makes is that it makes great crepes right now. It's not my mother's recipe. When she comes, she loves them the same way that when I go to her place, I love her crepes. And the reason is this is how things evolve. Recipe evolves, but also in our lives. The way we do things, the different process we go through the day to do what we want to do. And that's what leaders do. Leaders are in a situation. And instead of saying, oops, I don't know what to do, I don't have a list of instruction, people will say, okay, how can I make a very, very set steps so that I can get to the end result in a safe way, but that would work. And that's how innovation happens. It happens because you decide, okay, how about I try something new today? And it's something that I can bring back to you. And write in the comments below, what are the few things that you do sometimes that you don't need a recipe, you don't need instructions, you've done it so often that it comes naturally for you? Or what are some of the things you invented? I want you to know. Write them down in the comments. I'd love to see. Because cooking is a great way to do that. So what are we looking for today? My note here, because I write notes on what I want to share with you every time I have a video. And my word is, or my expression is, it's important to aim for action and not perfection. And you know what? That's how the world can go forward. As a scientist, for example, in geology, I remember when we had a property that was interesting, that had some interesting data. We would go in, we would do some mapping, we would collect more information, and eventually we would do some diamond drilling. And the reason we did diamond drilling is sometimes above the rocks, you have dirt and you have soils and you have till and you have all kind of sediments that prevents you from seeing what's under. And then you want to be able to see the third dimension underground. But what happens is when you create a diamond drilling program, you don't know what you're going to get. Based on the information you have and your interpretation, this is your best scenario based that you think could happen. And you're hoping to get the good results. It's the same thing in engineering or in science. Sometimes you have an idea and then you want to test something. And sometimes you say, well, I'm not sure if it's going to work. And then you take one step. You create a procedure saying, this is what I'm going to do. Let's get data and analyze the data. And the beauty of that is once you have data, you could say, okay, I am more informed and therefore I can create more knowledge. I can go to the next step based on the new information I have. And you know what? This allows you to go to the next step. And then if you do this again and again, it's a cycle that brings you forward. And that's the reason for why some mines that have a small ore body, a set limit of minerals or metals, they continue exploration and expand their mine. And how do they do that? Is they experiment. They have data, they interpret the data, and then they create an experiment. Then from there, they have new data. From the new data, new analysis, new conclusion, and we move on from there. See, this is what we want to do in life. Sometimes you have a friend and you want to talk to them about a delicate situation, and then you say something and you said the wrong word. But you didn't fail in communicating with your friend. What happened is you realize that either it was the wrong word or the wrong words, it was the wrong time, or it was the tone of your voice. You reassess how things are, and then you try again. Because what you want is you want the relationship between your friend and you to be better. See, it works very well. If you have a business and you have a product, some people will say, okay, I want to, let's see, let's take Apple, for example. Apple, they have their iPhone and iPads, for example. Let's take those line of product. The iPads and iPhones we have in 2021 are different than the one we had a few years back and different from the first one that came at some point. But you know what? Apple did not wait to have the perfect product to sell to customer. What they did is they created something amazing and then they offered it to the public. People started to enjoy the product and that gave them data to know what people loved, what they didn't like, and then they improved their products. And then they had new generation and so on, and the company expanded. If Apple in the last decade had waited to have the perfect product before launching it, it would not be the company it is now. Because you need to take action. And you can't wait for a perfect moment. You cannot wait for the perfect product to start taking action. So that's why I said that today's idea was that, okay, I forget how it's the aim for action and not perfection. So the question is, how can we do that? So let's see if I can give you 3 tips on how to be able to aim to take action and not wait for perfection. So one mentor I love to follow, his name is Evan Carmichael, and he has that rule of 85%. And his idea is if you are 85% sure that it will be what you're looking for, then may as well go all in. I know this 15%, it may not be perfect, but that's why the experience comes in. That's why you are taking action. You can adapt as you go along, but at least you're taking action. The last 15%, yes, things could work well, things could fail, but you know what? Every time you do, you are moving forward. So I think that 85% rule is great. I learned that from Evan, and Evan Carmichael is great with that idea. Sometimes when I'm not sure as well, I'm not quite sure, and as well, how sure are you? And if it goes to 70, 80, 85, 90, I say, well, it's not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. And it gets me going. And I can go to the next step. You can do it too. Another way you can actually work on that is sometimes some of you say, okay, if it's not 100%, I cannot do it. Let me see if I can share with you another way. If you have a project, sometimes it's so big you don't know what to do. You could decide to take that big project and break it down in smaller pieces. And what you realize is that instead of a big project that you're not quite sure, if let's say you divide it in six, you might notice that two of those six parts is 100% sure to work. Then you could focus on that, saying, okay, I have a six step to get my project done, and two are at 100% already. What happened is the other four, some may be at 80%, some may be at 50% sure it would work. But by starting taking action, it creates some momentum. You might notice a few things. Some of the steps that are not quite ready yet might come to be ready. And then by starting, it creates a momentum. And then you can achieve it. And at the end, maybe one of the part was causing difficulties instead of the whole project. And maybe that part is not that necessary. That's a good question. So you see, I think it's important to try. If you try, the worst case scenario is you're going to fail, but think about the fact that you may be failing forward because you're learning from failure. My third tip is about risk management or risk tolerance. What you have to keep in mind is I say to aim for action and not perfection. When you're taking action, you have to make sure that it is with calculated risks. Sometimes there are risks that can occur. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed. But you have to make sure that the risks are not too big for what you're looking for. If your health may be at risk, it's better not to do it. If the stability of your family, of your life is at risk, maybe it's not the best idea. If the risk is that you're going to create a wrong video or that you will say the wrong thing in a phone conversation, it is a risk, but it's a calculated risk because you are taking action, you're making a move to try something new, and if it works, all the better. If it doesn't work, well, you've learned from it, and then you can go to the next step. So these are 3 tips I have for you today. So let's see. First one is the 85% from Evan. Second is, why don't you take your project and break it down in smaller pieces and focus on the parts that are working for you, and then work with the other ones afterwards. And make sure, as a third point, that you are taking care of your health and your mental health so that whatever you do, it is with calculated risks. So that brings me to the fact that I have something for you to do. I have a call to action for you. I want to know what, if you can share with you, what is that feeling or what prevents you from taking action? You know, what is that thing that makes you procrastinate and not get started? That will be important. For me to be able to start my video recording for my channel, I had to set aside the fact that I was watching a little bit too much TV. So I decided to have less TV in a day. That freed up some time. I can work on my channel. So if you want to try something new, you'll have to set aside something. So I want to know what is happening in your life that creates that procrastination. What is it gets in your way? Write it down below. I want to know. And if I see that I can have tricks for you, I will create videos to help you specifically or even answer your question, because we're here together to make the world a better place. So on this, I'm going to put here a few videos, 1, 2, maybe 2 here, about what you can do next to make the world a better place. I'll see you there.